So, greetings, and the more eagle-eyed among you will notice that this is Total War Warhammer and not Reforged, but Reforged I will be getting to this weekend. I had a few things in Warhammer that I did during the week which I think are worth showing, and now naturally I am playing as the Beastmen, and I'm up against a army from the Vampire Counts. I have brought along 3 Cygors, I've brought quite a lot of Ungor Spears, I also have a couple of Gorbals, very impressive hero units. My lord is Morgur the Shadow Gaze, and he's probably the best beast lord, to be honest with you, at least he's my favourite. I also have some Ungor Raiders and a couple of units of Minotaurs with great weapons. My opponent has brought 3 Terrorgeists, a couple of Crypt Horrors which he's upgraded to gold chevrons, a couple of Cairn Wraiths, and he also has a standard Vampire Lord on foot, 2 Graveguard, and actually no, he's got 4 Graveguard. And he's also got a couple of Banshees, so he's got quite a few ethereal units, an interesting mix of things that he's got. But, interestingly enough, I decided to bring 3 Cygors because I did notice through my games playing as the Beastman in both campaign and a few online games that they tend to be a little bit overly aggressive, and that leads to their downfall more often than not. So I decided to force my opponent towards me with the 3 Cygors, and they're pretty good in melee as well. So I was really banking on the fact that he didn't have a lot of anti-large, and he does have Terrorgeists, but it's all going to come down to whether or not I am going to be able to cover my weaker units with my Minotaurs with great weapons and hope that my spears at the front hold against his more elite units, particularly his ethereal units. But my units are now moving forward, so we'll get back into the regular speed. I'll put it in cinematic mode as well because it looks nicer. The Terrorgeists are going to be a bit of a problem. If he charges into my spears now, he could break a unit of them, so that's why I'm going to need to get my Gorbals and my archers forwards and ready to face them. Because my archers will be able to get some decent damage done to the Terrorgeists at range, but they are very scary. My Minotaurs are going to be able to do a decent amount of damage against them though. At least that's the plan, and my archers, while my Cygors will be just launching their boulders into the vampire lines. And he's advancing kind of weirdly here, it's not even. His Crypt Horrors are going to engage my spears pretty quickly, then it'll be the Cairn Wraith, and then the Graveguard are pretty far behind, but he'd have been far better off engaging as one and using an Invocation of Nehek to keep my spears losing the fight. My Gorbal is now in the fight against these Crypt Horrors, and this is going to be fairly even for the most part. The Gorbal's going to be able to deal a lot of damage, but so are the Crypt Horrors. His Terrorgeists are just sat back here eating a lot of arrow fire because of my Minotaurs. Morgur is going to be going in here, and he is going to be engaging the Cairn Wraiths with these frontal spears, and he'll be able to last for a pretty long time. And the Cygor is going to be able to deal a good amount of damage with their magical boulders. Over here, he has engaged my Gorbal with 2 of his Banshees, and this is not a fight the Gorbal will win because the Banshees are ethereal, and this means they have a high physical resistance, which, you know, physical damage is really what the Gorbal is all about. Over here, meanwhile, his Terrorgeists have landed in a big blob, and my Minotaurs are able to get a lot of damage done against them. He did manage to break one of my archers, but it's not worth it, not for 3 Terrorgeists. He is breaking some of my spears over here, and he is raising up some zombies. The zombies won't do a great deal against Cygors though. Over here, meanwhile, he has lost a lot of Crypt Horrors in exchange for basically routing 2 spear units, whereas my Gorbal is still pretty healthy, and he's going to be able to beat these crumbling Crypt Horrors. He hasn't sent this other unit in to help them, and that will be their demise, especially with the Cygors launching their boulders into the lines. His Graveguard is routing some of my spears, and my spears are falling apart somewhat, but his units, he's running out of infantry units. So Morgur is in the mix here with the Vampire Lord, and the Vampire Lord is not going to beat Morgur, especially not with Minotaurs coming in. So yeah, the Vampire Lord is in a big heap of trouble, and without him laying down Invocations of Nehek, the vampires are not going to be able to regenerate, and this fight is turning against them pretty rapidly, especially seeing as the Terrorgeists and the Banshees are now eating a lot of archer fire, and my Minotaurs are chasing them down. These zombies are not even bothering the Cygor really, he's just squishing them. It is stopping him from firing, but ultimately I have 2 others which are firing. And these Graveguard are eating a lot of the boulders, and it's really the only units he has left which are capable of doing any damage to me. And the Minotaurs are here. The Cairn Wraiths, a good unit, but they were overwhelmed by the amount of Spearmen and Morgur. I didn't actually, and they crumbled. In fact, the Vampire army has crumbled almost entirely at this point. So victory is assured for me, really. This Terrorgeist is the only unit that's left, and it routed. So there we are. A nice victory for me there. The Beastmen aren't considered one of the stronger factions because of their lack of options, but I actually do rather like them. Their strength in melee is very, very high, and with the Cygors I was able to force the vampires into a bit of an unhealthy situation for them. But yeah, the amount of kills that I got across my units were relatively low. The archers were mainly focusing down Terrorgeists, so that's why they didn't get a lot of kills. The spears were never meant to get many kills. Really, it was the Cygors which really paid off for me. The Minotaurs and Morgur, all of that, were all up against units like Terrorgeists and the Lord, so they're not going to get a lot of kills. The Cairn Wraiths did a decent job, but I feel like they could have been used a little bit better. They were just sort of charged into the middle and unsupported, so I feel like the ethereal units were a good pick because the Banshees did manage to kill one of my Gore Bulls. And if he used his ethereal units a little bit better, he would have been able to overwhelm my spears, certainly, in the weaker areas of my line. And he should have charged in his Terrorgeists into my spears early on, to be honest with you. Because then he would have been able to rout my spears, and then his infantry would have fared a lot better without the numbers deficit that they had. And it was a bit of a weird pick from him, to be honest. I can see why you would go for the aerial advantage against the Beastmen. They don't really have a lot of flying units. You have to summon all of them. And the Terrorgeists are a very scary unit if they're used correctly, but I don't know, I feel like his pick was a bit odd. There were a few things that I would have changed, like I wouldn't have had chevrons on the Crypt Horrors. They're good, but they ultimately didn't pay off all that much because a Gorbel just came along and really shreked them. If he wanted 3 Terrorgeists, I would have gotten rid of one of the Terrorgeists and put the Strigoi Ghoul King up on his Terrorgeist. Then you would have combined a better Lord with the combined aerial presence of 3 Terrorgeists. And I also would have had a few more infantry units, a few more low tier like zombies, just to tie down some of my units, because my spears were able to comfortably hold the line, really, because ultimately his approach was a little bit sloppy with how he sort of hit with the Crypt Horrors first, then the Cairn Wraiths, then the Graveguard. He should have hit all at once and then used Invocations of Nehek to really make my spears life uncomfortable. And then he would have been able to get to my Cygors much faster. As it is, though, the Cygors really managed to put the hurt on him. And that's how I won. And it was a fun battle, and I also had another one against this guy, which was even closer, actually, so I hope to see you for that one too.